in the media conference with Lal Goyal, which is brought to you by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Sarokar News, Organ Donation India Foundation and Gyan. Our endeavor is to enlighten you with the current topic. Today we are taking a very different but very relevant topic, and the topic is marriage and law. But before that, I would like to inform you that today is the 1st April, and today is known as April Fool's Day. April Fool's Day is an annual custom on April 1st, consisting of practical jokes and hoaxes. Jokesters often expose their actions by shouting April Fools at the recipient. Mass media can be involved in these pranks, which may be revealed as such the following day. The day is not a public holiday in any country except Odessa in Ukraine, where the 1st of April is an official city holiday. The custom of setting aside a day for playing harmless pranks has been relatively common in the world historically. Some historians speculate that April Fool's date back to 1582, when France switched from the Julian calendar to Gregorian calendar as called for by the Council of Trent in 1563. In the Julian calendar, as in the Hindu calendar, the new year began with the spring equinox around April 1st. People who were slow to get the news or failed to recognize that the start of the new year had moved to January 1st and continued to celebrate it during the last week of March through April 1st became the butt of jokes and hoaxes and were called April Fools. Media conference with Lal Goyal wish you all a very happy, enjoyable April Fool's Day. Now coming to our main topic, the topic is marriage and law. A successful marriage requires falling in love many times, always with the same person. The greatest marriages are built on teamwork, a mutual respect, a healthy dose of admiration, and a never-ending portion of love and grace. Marriage, also called matrimony or wedlock, is a culturally recognized union between people called spouses that establishes rights and obligations between them, as well as between them and their children and between them and their in-laws. It is considered a cultural universal, but the definition of marriage varies between cultures and religions and over time. Typically, it is an institution in which interpersonal relationships, usually sexual, are acknowledged or sanctioned. In some culture, marriages is recommended or considered to be compulsory before pursuing any sexual activity. A marriage ceremony is called a wedding. Individuals may marry for several reasons, including legal, social, libidinal, emotional, financial, spiritual, and religious purpose. Whom they marry may be influenced by gender, socially determined rules of incest, perspective, marriage rules, parental choice, and individual desire. In some areas of the world, arranged marriage, child marriage, polygamy, and forced marriages are practiced. In other areas, such practices are outlawed to preserve women's rights or children's rights or as a result of international law. Marriage has historically restricted the rights of women who are sometimes considered the property of the husband. Around the world, primarily in developed democracies, there has been a general trend towards ensuring equal rights for women within marriage and legally recognizing the marriages of interfaith, interracial, and same-sex couples. Controversies continues regarding the legal status of married women, leniency towards violence within marriage, customs such as dowry and bride price, forced marriages, marriageable age, and criminalization of premarital and extramarital sex. Marriage can be recognized by a state, an organization, a religious authority, a tribal group, a local community, or peers. It is often viewed as a contract. It usually creates normative or legal obligations between the individuals involved and any offspring they may produce or adopt. When a marriage is performed by religious institutions, it is a religious marriage. Religious marriage recognizes and creates the rights and obligations intrinsic to matrimony in the eye of that religion. Religious marriage is known variously as sacramental marriage in Catholicism, nikah in Islam, nizulin in Judaism, and various other names in other faith traditions, each with own constraints as to what constitutes and who can enter into a valid religious marriage. When a marriage is performed and carried out by a government institution in accordance with the marriage laws of the jurisdiction without religious content, it is a civil marriage. Civil marriage recognizes and creates the rights and obligations intrinsic to matrimony in the eyes of the state. Some countries do not recognize locally performed religious marriage on its own and require a separate civil marriage for official purpose. Conversely, civil marriage does not exist in some countries governed by a religious legal system, such as Saudi Arabia, where marriages contracted abroad may not be recognized if they were contracted contrary to Saudi interpretation of Islamic religious laws. In countries governed by a mixed secular religious legal system, such as Lebanon and Israel, locally performed civil marriage does not exist within the country, which prevents interfaith and various other marriages that contradict religious laws from being entered into the country. However, civil marriages performed abroad may be recognized by the state even if they conflict with religious laws. Marriage laws refers to the legal requirements which determine the validity of a marriage, which vary considerably between countries. Article 16 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights declares that men and women of full age, without any limitation due to race, nationality, or religion, have the right to marry and to found a family. They are entitled to equal rights as to marriage, during marriage, and its dissolution. Marriage shall be entered into only with the free and full consent of the intending spouses. Indian Special Marriage Act was enacted in 1954 for any Indian couple, irrespective of community of origin. Interfaith couples, as well as anyone who wants to opt out of their personal law, can marry under this civil secular law. In practice, those marrying under this law face many more hurdles than under personal laws. A notice of intended marriage with names, addresses, and photos of the couple must be sent to the marriage registrar 30 days before the event and displayed prominently. Any person can object to the marriage on specified grounds. This allows families and community vigilantes to interfere with the couple's plans. Marriage officials also throw their weight behind the families. The Kerala government has recently stopped displaying these notices in the marriage registrar's office because they are misused for communal discord and targeted harassment. The Supreme Court is currently hearing a challenge to these provisions on the grounds that they conflict with the right to privacy and the right to equality. Hindu and Muslim marriage laws do not have these requirements. For instance, a woman has to be at least 21 years to marry under the Special Marriage Act, but only 18 years under Hindu personal law. The Hindu Marriage Act is on an act of the Parliament of India enacted in 1955. The main purpose of the act was to amend and codify the law relating to the marriage among Hindus and others. Beside amending and codifying Shastric law, it introduced separation and divorce, which did not exist in Shastric law. This enactment brought uniformity of law for all sections of Hindus. In India, there are religion-specific civil codes that separately govern adherents of certain other religions. And to discuss today's topic, that is marriage and law, we have a very, very expert authority and legal luminaries in on this field in our panel today. And I would like to invite my first panelist. He is Dr. Rajiv Anand. Dr. Rajiv Anand is a senior psychiatrist and marriage counselor. Dr. Rajiv Anand passed his MBBS in 1976 and did MD in psychiatry in 1980 from King's George Medical College, Lucknow. He opted to serve his country when it was very common to settle abroad for a brighter future. He has been serving society with his base in Mumbai. He has clients all over India as well as in many other countries. He was honored with Lifetime Achievement Award by AMA. He has conducted more than 3,000 workshops for different groups and companies with audience size of 10 to 800. His television program on various channels have been widely appreciated for his forthright and practical approach. He is leading in the field of mental and emotional well-being for more than 40 years. He was president of IMA for 2 times. He was interviewed in several talk shows in domestic and internationally. Welcome, Dr. Rajiv Anand, on our show. Dr. Rajiv Anand, today's topic is marriage and law. And you are a very, very senior marriage counselor, apart from a senior psychiatrist. And you are dealing with marriage problems day in, day out. Now, we would like to know from you your views on marriage and law. Dr. Rajiv Anand, please.
Good morning, Mr. Lal. And thank you for the kind words. Good morning to my fellow panelists, Jyoti Pawarji, Palash Banerjee, and Sanket Gupta. All of you are welcome, and equal extension, the welcome to the viewers of this program, courtesy Mr. Lal, over last more than a year. The viewers in Kerala and Karnataka and UP and Bihar and other places through YouTube and Facebook Live. I'm really impressed with the jiggle Mr. Lal had, supported by the Global TV and other TV channels, supported by Mr. Paul. Great efforts and great knowledge is being shared. Yes, I happen to be a marriage counselor. And beginning with the lighter note, I'm married just once. And I have no issue about it, and I don't intend to get married second time or third time or fourth time. And I look behind that my grandfather, on both sides, paternal and maternal, were married just once. So did my father or mother. And there was a time in the society when marriage was a very healthy institution, which didn't have any intervention from the law. Do we recall anyone having gone to the court for registering our marriage, our grandfather, grandparents? No, that was never heard of. Yet marriages did last 50 years, 60 years. We have heard marriages celebrating Golden Jubilee and possibly Platinum Jubilee also in some cases. Silver Jubilee was the norm. Today, Mrs. Jyoti Pawar, who is a senior lawyer, would agree with me that as much as the law has come, as much options, as much escape routes are there, today it's not uncommon to find marriages breaking apart within a few days. The fastest breakup of the marriage I came to know was 10 o'clock the girl got married, and 4 o'clock in the morning she went back to her parents' house. Before that, I had witnessed only one marriage. So Sunday a girl got married, and fourth day, Thursday, she wanted to get out and take divorce. So fourth day, and then I came across just 6 hours. The marriage was on the verge of being annulled. So where have we come? On one hand, we rejoice, we gloat, we celebrate that we have become modern, we have become educated, we have become advanced. We are having progressive thinking. On another hand, we need law to support our most beautiful relationship called marriage between two individuals, husband and wife. Marriage was essentially, as each one of us would agree, was a bond, was a beautiful relationship between two hearts, two hearts. I'm emphasizing this word, two hearts, which had emotions, boundless emotions. Once begin, would never end. If somebody got married to someone else, it was for life. हम सब लोगों ने हिंदी में वो कहानियां या वो मुहावरा सुना हुआ है कि हम डोली में आए थे और अर्थी में जाएंगे. एक बार इस घर में आए हैं तो हम यहीं रहेंगे जिंदगी भर. या एक बार हमारी इनसे शादी हुई है तो 7 जन्म तक हम विवाह के बंधन में रहेंगे. Fair enough, that some people, some or maybe a little more than some, might have misused this excessive power invested in men, or invested in in-laws, invested in certain section of society. But that didn't mean the whole baby has to be thrown along with the dirty water. Society has come far distant from what was a beautiful relationship between two loving hearts to law would decide. Law would decide who would stay with whom and for how long. If tomorrow law come and decide that where in my house I should sit and eat lunch or dinner, if law would decide that which meal I should take, which meal I should escape, if law would decide what food I should take and what food I should not take, what life would become? It's not even in China. It's not even in a communist country. So back to the main topic of marriage, I'm of the view that there should have been no place for law in marriage. The religion to begin with, we all celebrate even after thousands of years the marriage of Ram Sita. We all come from different part of the country where Ramchandra Ji's Barat is celebrated as a main occasion, as something festival all year. We all have heard about Shiv Parvati Vivah, and we have mythological story Shiv Parvati. We all talk about Radha Krishna. Of course, somebody would say Radhaji was not legally wedded wife to Krishna, but always name was associated with male female together. And perhaps many people who are viewing this program, as well as panelists, would agree, ours is the only society, ours is the only religion, ours is the only country where the deities or the people whom we adore or worship, they are taken name together. Shiv Parvati, Sitaram, Radha Krishna, Vishnu Lakshmi. Which other religion or which other part of the world celebrate their God as together? While we celebrate them together because that's the power. There's empowerment of each other, there's complementation of each other, there's completion of each other. So we always celebrated man and woman together. We never hesitated, we never looked at any other aspect of marriage, rather completing each other and making a unit. Now, marriage is an important unit of the society. Society cannot survive if the marriage is not having a strong foundation. That's why whichever part of the world marriage began breaking apart, or whichever section of the society, wherever in the world, where marriage began being taken lightly, the society began disintegrating. Large number of cases of rapism or beatles or loose marriages or premarital relationship or breakups or 3, 4, 5 breakups before getting married and 3, 4, 5 marriages after that, and people getting disappointed, disillusioned, and the last incidents of depression or divorces or extramarital relationship. From where did it begin? It didn't begin originally from our country. We had celebrated marriage, we had celebrated relationship, we had celebrated and respect to the people who were very important in our life. We might have clicked with them 100%, we might not have clicked with them. We might have liked them 100%, not liked with them. That's a different question. But people stuck to each other. They didn't seek the recourse in law. Today, when I talk to my advocate colleague, there have been plenty of people where the mother or father of the girls have threatened the boy. हम तुमको कोर्ट में ले जाएंगे, हम तुमको जेल करा देंगे, तुम हमारी बेटी को अगर ऐसे नहीं रखोगे, वैसे नहीं रखोगे तो हम पूरे खानदान को जेल करा देंगे. Is that what law was meant for? Or the girls threatening the in-laws that I would take you all to task to the court. Is that all? Or the man threatening the woman that I would divorce you if you don't follow my instruction. Is the law meant for breaking the marriage? Is the law like any Tom, Dick, and Harry, like a constable with a baton in his hand, with a danda in his hand, which would come to our house and would act like the mediator, would dominate over the wife, the suffering wife, that you have to obey the way your husband wanted, or the way around? No. Law, I believe, initially didn't have any place in marriage. But then some people misused institution of marriage, and for which thousands of others have to pay the price. Religion itself was big enough binding force. All of us have taken vow of the marriage, taking Saat Feras. One gentleman who is young, who has yet to take the Saat Fera, may be amused about. He has not yet. Palash Banerjee, am I right? You are not married as yet. But most witnessed the fire. We witnessed the God. And we continued respecting the vows, taking Saat Fera. That was good enough. Then there was a system of society. The neighbors, the elders, the relatives would come and witness a very sacred ceremony of marriage. And being witnessed by them was good enough security, good enough insurance, good enough binding force much before the law came into the picture. Maybe that Mrs. Jyoti Pawar may think that I'm attacking her profession. No, she understands me well. I do understand her well. But the law is going in a different direction, that these days law is being misused for misapplication in the case of marriage. I've had real, trust me, I've had real arguments, real argument with certain divorce lawyers, when either the man or the woman have gone to them for the divorce proceeding and cases almost reach the divorce. And I very politely and very indulgently, I fought with them, those divorce lawyers. I said, give me 2 months time. This marriage can be saved. And they said, no, this marriage can't be saved. I said, no, this marriage can be saved. And she continued harping on this marriage can't be saved, nothing is left in this marriage. And finally, I could take the marriage out of her. I said, give me 3 months. And plenty of marriages have been saved. They had second child, they have third child, they're living happily. Now, why I'm mentioning this case? Just for a simple point of view. If we will have escape routes, people would escape. Law has provided this escape route. Most marriages need a lot of investment of time and emotions and efforts and energy continuously, right from day one of the marriage, even before the marriage. Now, most people are not interested in investment of the time, energy, emotion, and efforts in the marriage. And they feel dissatisfied. And when they feel dissatisfied, they begin raising finger at each other. They begin accusing each other. And my purpose of this particular talk is that many people are trying to take recourse of the law without having wondered, without having looked inside, that they themselves are responsible for not nourishing their marriage, not taking care of their life partner, not letting marriage prosper or flourish. And then they're taking the course of the law to break this marriage so that they can be free from this marriage, that they can be free enough to get into second marriage. But second marriage, they would repeat the pattern of not taking care of each other, pattern of not nourishing each other, pattern of not providing security in the relation to each other, pattern of not getting emotionally bonded with each other. Marriage is not a very light, a very shallow, a very superficial relationship. Marriage is not just going to the malls or going to the restaurant and going to the movie and saying, I love you, I love you. That is a very glossy, very superficial, candy on the ice kind of a thing. This very, very superficial concept of marriage. Marriage is far, far deeper than that. So last 2 minutes of my talk is meant for those thousands of viewers or lakhs of viewers, wheresoever they are, those who are listening to this program, courtesy Mr. Lal, please, you are yourself much more than law. You are yourself much more than religion or the society. If you are married forever. Don't invite law into that. Because moment law come, logic come. Mr. Pawar would agree with me, law is bundle of logic. Marriage is relationship of heart. If the relationship with the heart is not prospering, not flourishing, not blossoming, work on it. If you bring logic into it, if you go to the court, the logic provided by the lawyers of the opposite party would make you naked in the court, in public. Those things which never existed, which you never said, which you never did, would also be attributed to you. This is what a legal system currently has become. Courtesy certain type of lawyer, not all kind of lawyer. Palash, no need to feel offended. You have been practicing the law. But certain people, I have gone as a witness in marriage cases, and those lawyers try to take me for a right, and I had to request the judge, what is this? You have called me an expert witness, while here I am being humiliated. Because they would ask this question, those kind of questions. So once the law come into the picture, there's no end of disaster, no end of humiliation. And I have seen once the law come into the picture, the possibility of they getting reconciliation, possibility of they getting reunited, possibility of the couple getting back to each other's arms or each other's life become diminished. And we all know the basic function of marriage was perpetuation of society, perpetuation of human species, the continuation of the family system. That's what I said in the beginning. The society would survive when a marriage would be strong. What about the children? Law can give divorce to two individuals. Law can give custody of the child to the mother or the father. But do we know from our heart what happened to the children who are in one parent's custody and they happen to see once in a week or once in a month? or they happen to practically forget that they have a father or they have a mother, or they have symbolically just one evening out in a garden, their psyche gets so split, they get so affected right from the beginning, just because their parents did not know the meaning of marriage. And they took shelter behind the law that this wife can't take care of me, so I would divorce, or this husband can't take care of me. So my request to people concerned in the legal profession, I agree that this is their profession, and I agree they have to continue doing their best. But somehow, many people are misusing the law. Be on guard, be vigilant about it. It's not the question of just husband wife. We all have seen innumerable number of kids feeling devastated and seeing their parents can't get along for reasons beyond their understanding. So I shall be ending over here. Over to you, Mr. Lal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rajiv Anand, for giving your expert opinions and views about the marriage and law. And what Dr. Rajiv Anand in his starting mentioned, that the grandfather and the fathers, they never have any problem. They never gone to the courts because at that time there were no laws. And he says when there was no laws, the marriage were very successful because the Special Marriage Act came for the first time in 1954 and the Hindu Marriage Act came in 1955. And the grandfathers and the fathers married before that. So what Dr. Rajiv Anand want to make a point is that when there was no law, the harmony between the husband and wife, the families were far, far better than today conditions. Here, he has given an example that wedding took place at 10 o'clock in the night and 4 o'clock, the wife or the girl has left the house and she says, I want divorce. Similarly, other examples he has quoted. And he also mentioned, which is a very, very important point, is that when some reconciliation can take place, although the court grants the time, but there are factors, there are few, he said, there are not everyone, but there are few advocates who are not interested that they should reconcile. And there the problems start. And he even mentioned that the way the families were being humiliated in the court is also not acceptable. It should be changed. And we must understand the psyche of the children, because even if the court grants divorce, the husband wife start staying separately. What is the position of the child? What was the mistake of the child? The mistake was that their parents are now staying separately, and the child's psyche from the very beginning is very much under pressure, and that's why lots of crimes are taking place. Thank you very much, Dr. Rajiv Anand, for giving such a frank and expert views today on our show, although you always give, but today is I can say, because today is a subject where you are dealing day and night. Yeah, I can understand as a human being, forget as a doctor, when you come across such type of people, and especially the children, what type of things happen even to you. And when you, and Dr. Rajiv Anand also made a very special point, then when he was called as an expert witness, why he was humiliated by the lawyer, which is not acceptable. After he is going an expert witness on the request of the court, then if he is going there, he has to be given full respect and regards. After all, he's an expert in the field. He's not a witness who has been coming, or who has been a paid witness, or sometimes a fake witness. He's an expert witness. He's supposed to give his expert opinion. That's it. Anyway, thank you very much, Dr. Rajiv Anand.
Sure.
That is why today's topic is interesting, because it's a marriage and law. Now I would like to invite my next guest, and she's Advocate Jyoti Pawar. Advocate Jyoti Pawar is practicing law for last more than 33 years in Mumbai. She has done masters in science and masters in law. She worked as a special public prosecutor in Sessions Court in Mumbai and was on teaching faculty of JC Law College, Mumbai. In 1995, she was appointed as additional public prosecutor, High Court, dealing with important criminal writs as well as criminal appeals. Thereafter, in 1999, she was appointed as the head of writ appellate side, which gave her a chance to defend government in high stakes matters as well as public interest litigations touching social causes. She was in the panel of central government as senior counsel MHADA, BMC in the High Court, Mumbai. At present, she is practicing in High Court at Mumbai. Welcome, Advocate Jyoti Pawar, on our show. Please unmute yourself, Advocate Jyoti Pawar. Advocate Jyoti Pawar, you have heard what Dr. Rajiv Anand has mentioned. Now, we would like to know marriage and law. Advocate Jyoti Pawar, please.
Hello, sir. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yes. First of all, at the outset, I want to thank Dr. Rajiv Anand for introducing me to this media platform, digital media platform. And thanks to you also for giving me the chance to speak on such a delicate topic like marriage and law. I feel that as far as law is concerned, and I am practicing lawyer since last 33 years, I would not touch the subject of what Mr. Rajiv Anand has touched, because he comes in close contact with the litigants. Whereas in High Court and the courts, we don't come in much contact with the litigants, but we do know the difficulties faced by them and the delicacies involved in marriage laws. At the outset, the marriage laws were not regulated at all pre-independence, that is in British era or before British era. The customary law was followed as far as marriages were concerned. The marriages were celebrated according to their own cultures and traditions. Thereafter, when British Britishers were ruling India, Mr. Warren Hastings brought in the personal law, and that was the first time, that is in 1772, that the Marriage Act was made applicable. Thereafter, post-independence, the government didn't interfere much with the law which was made by Warren Hastings, and it was followed up till 1955, when ultimately the Hindu Marriage Act came into being. Now, what has happened, that as far as earlier question was concerned, that is before pre-independence or even post-independence, till the Marriage Act came into being, the marriages were taking place, but as far as Hindus are concerned, even they were allowed to keep more than one wife. It is not that only one wife was there post pre-independence days. It was even more than one wife. So there I would little bit disagree with Mr. Dr. Rajiv Anand, who is a very good friend of mine. But that time there used to be no courts and nobody used to go to court. There were 2-3 wives to Hindu persons also. Even the great-grandfathers, we remember, had 2 or 3 wives, and they were staying very peacefully and very calmly with each other. There was nothing like courts or fightings taking place that time, because as such, the females in the house were only made to do the work at home, and they used to take help of the people and do domicile work. Nothing else. They used to never go outside. Today, it is totally different. The girls are highly educated, even more educated than the boys, and they are going outside for work. They are economically very independent, and that has brought a major change in our society today. Now, as far as Hindu Marriage Act is concerned, one had to keep in mind the different traditions and different cultures that are followed by different communities which are there in our society. Cultural diversity as well as traditional diversity had to be kept in mind while forming the acts. The Hindu Marriage Act came to being into 1955. Thereafter, there are several marriages. Now, this was a codified law, but as far as Muslim minority is concerned, which is the largest minority in our country, there was no law, codified law for them. But Muslim Registration Act was there, which was ruling as far as registration of marriages, Muslim marriages is concerned. That was in 1981. Now, as far as Hindus are concerned, it was a sacrament, traditional sacrament, and it was a lifelong commitment. Marriages were supposed to be a lifelong commitment. Now, as far as Muslims are concerned, it was a civil contract. That was the basic difference between Hindus and Muslims. The contract was there where it was called as Nikahnama, and a fixed meher was given to the lady in the form of money or whatever it is, and till the marriage would not end, or it would have not ended into divorce like talaq. Now we have different marriage acts like Parsi Marriage Act, also the Special Marriage Act, and also the Sikh marriage laws came into being. For the reason Sikhs are also Hindus. But what had happened that several Sikhs who were settled abroad, they were finding it difficult to get a marriage certificate under the Hindu Marriage Act. And therefore, they had made several representations before the High Court and the Supreme Court to give a different law so that they could be a specific community for that purpose to get a marriage certificate from the registrar. Now, in this case, Mr. Manmohan Singh had, since he was also a Sikh Sardar, he pursued the matter and he brought into a bill which was given assent by the President of India that time in 2012, and which was called as Anand Marriage Act. And that Anand Marriage Act, for the purpose of these foreigners who the Indians settle abroad, that is the Sikh community who is settled abroad, they would get a NOC under that act, and also in the visa the stamp will be there, and then the foreigners would accept them. So for that reason, for the mental harassment that they went through, this Anand Marriage Act came into being. Now their marriage which is celebrated is also called as Anand Karaj. That's why also this Anand Marriage Act was named as far as this blissful event is concerned. Now, Parsis, they follow Zoroastrian tenets of traditions, and therefore their traditions were different from the Hindus, and therefore Special Marriage Act, that is Parsi Marriage Act, Parsi marriage laws were formed, and they were in the year 1936. That is quite long back, because the Parsi community is very old community in India. Now, what has happened that, as Dr. Rajiv Anand said, that we have various provisions in Hindu Marriage Act, and this was mainly made to regulate the law so that nobody takes disadvantage. Like there are certain conditions which are mentioned in section 5 of the Hindu Marriage Act, wherein they said that it should be, the person should not be insane, the person should not be married when he's getting married. So there were different regulations which were given by the court so to follow, so that the marriage remains as really a pious and legitimate marriage. Now, for a legitimate marriage, the first condition under the Hindu Marriage Act was that the girl should be 18 years of age and the boy should be 21 years of age. Unlike what Mr. Lal said, that in Special Marriage Act, the age is said to be 21. Now, what has happened that the age factor was very good for law, because earlier there used to be very early marriages. Even before attaining puberty, the girls used to get married. So fixing the age was one good thing which was done by the Hindu Marriage Act, like other provisions. Unfortunately, today, instead of seeing as a regulatory authority, we see that under Section 13 of the Hindu Marriage Act, divorces are taking place, because I said that the females in our society have become so independent that they do not want to stay in the house earlier, which the rules, or rather the tradition which was there for the females to stay in the house, bring up the children, rear the children. Today, the girls want to go out, earn for themselves. And not only that, they want to also be in equality to the gents. And of course, the government is also trying to bring them at par with the males. Now, this has made a lot of difference in our society. There's a lot, 360 degrees change in what earlier females used to be. Now, what has happened that today when we go to family courts, earlier there was no family courts at all. Only the district courts used to decide on the point of divorce. Today, we have several family courts established only for divorce and maintenance and custody. This is very unfortunate, rather, that the courts are flooded with so much litigation today that people just think marriage is just a contract like it was in Muslim Act, and they just get married for a namesake. And if at all something goes wrong, immediately they jump on divorce. And surprisingly, when I visit the family courts, I see that the divorces by mutual consent has become a norm of the day. Since both the parties are equally earning, they just settle out of the court, form certain conditions, they write it down and present it to the court, and divorce is granted within 6 months. It's very unfortunate. Dr. Rajiv Anand, as he said, that the counselors which are sitting in the family courts, to whom the litigants are sent for counseling sessions, I feel that they are not at par with the counselors who are outside. Today's need of the day is that we have to have a proper set of counselors who would be definitely looking at this marriage as a very delicate subject and taking care of it as if it was their family who was going in for a divorce. Today, everything is done commercially. They feel that the litigants are grown-up adults. They know what exactly to do and what exactly not to do. It's their concern, and they just sit there and counsel them, try to counsel them in a very commercial way. And if the counseling fails, immediately the divorce is granted by the court. So the cases are piling up before the divorce courts. Unfortunately, the marriages which were taking place in the caste, in the particular religion, now intercaste marriages are happening day in and out, inter-religious marriages are happening day and night. Not only that, inter-countries marriages are taking place. Now with this, there is so much of change of faith, traditions, culture, that it is not possible for the lady or even the gent to adjust to each other with the changing cultural and traditions. Now, because that is also one of the reasons why they cannot adjust to their families and they happen to rush to go to the court. Now, I do not know what Dr. Anand said, that this has been misused. Yes, in some 498 cases, we do see that the girls are taking the family of the boys for granted. And for small reasons, since the government supports the females in such domestic violence cases, some matters are there where the girls take the family to a ride by filing 498A complaints against the family in the police. Now, as far as the Special Marriage Act is concerned, this deals with all the intercaste and interreligious marriages in India particularly. And the Foreign Marriage Act deals with the marriages between the Indian and foreign spouses or between foreigners. Now, what has happened that the legislation which had made Hindu Marriage Act or other acts in earlier days, they are faced with a lot of problems as to changing society, changing norms in the society. And India is such a diversified country with multiple cultures and traditions. It becomes really difficult for the legislation to formulate a particular law. Looking at the situation today, what it is, where the girls and boys are now equally slated to each other. Now it has become more difficult for the persons, even the courts, trying to deal with this type of meaningless divorces. Now, coming to the problem of the LGBT community, that is when 377 section was decriminalized by the Supreme Court. Now, a case is filed in Kerala High Court by the gay couple to give them the right, legitimate right for marriage. This is still pending before the court, since the central government and the state government both are notified in this regard, and the LGBT community still are striving to get their rights as under any other personal law. Doing this will require a lot of chaos, as matrimonial as marriage is supposed to be only between a male and a female. There is no concept in marriage as to same gender marriages. So for forming such type of marriages, the government is in confusion, and that will require a lot of willpower to take such decision by the government to give equal rights to the LGBT community as per any other personal law. As far as the divorces are concerned, sir, divorces are taking place, as I told, the most important reason I told is because the economic conditions of the ladies today, the cultural differences and the intercaste marriages that are taking place. I won't say that it is bad. It is very good for the society. But then the sensitivity of the couples have decreased to such a lot that every point of time, whether there is any fight, there are no, in such type of intercaste marriages, the parents don't interfere. they take their own decisions. They take their own decisions to divorce each other and go to the court. So these are all the changes which are taking place in the society, and we have to cope up with it and see what has to be done next. I think I should give the mic to my other fellow panelists. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, Advocate Jyoti Pawar, for giving your views. I would like not to comment much because she has explained about marriage and the law in details. Only one point I would like to highlight, which she says that about the counselors which are available from the court side. They are not either that much expert, or they are so much overworked that they have lost the credibility, and that's why she suggested that the more expert counselors or the outside counselors to be engaged in the cases for the divorce, etc. Thank you very much, Advocate Pawar, because you have explained each and everything, and you have also explained about the all religions, marriage acts, etc. So I need not to give and summarize the things. Now I would like to invite my next guest, and he is Advocate Sanket Gupta. Advocate Sanket Gupta is a graduated in law from University of Delhi in 2012 and enrolled with Bar Council of Delhi. Since then, practicing as a self-practitioner lawyer, he is handling civil, criminal, and corporate matters and appearing in Honorable Delhi High Court, District Courts of Delhi, National Company Law Tribunal, and various other tribunals, commissions, etc. in Delhi. Advocate Sanket Gupta, welcome to our show. You have already heard what Dr. Rajiv Anand as well as Advocate Jyoti Pawar has mentioned. Now, we would like to know from you your views on marriage and law. Advocate Sanket Gupta, please.
Thank you, Mr. Lal. Thank you for kind words. Good morning to my fellow panelists, Dr. Rajiv Anand, Advocate Jyoti Pawar, Advocate Palash Banerjee. I would like to speak on historical developments of Hindu Marriage Act and the timelines and reasons which codified this marriage law. I would also like to thank Dr. Rajiv Anand for giving me the opportunity to come on this digital platform. So what is marriage? A marriage is a social institution that has been established to regulate our lives. It is a sacrament in a Hindu law. It is the very foundation of a family and a civilized society. Now, as early as the time of Rig Veda, marriage had assumed a sacred character of a sacrament, and sanction of religion had heightened the character and importance of the institution of marriage. Marriage is necessarily for the basis of social organization and the foundation of important legal rights and obligations. It is in the family that children learn to become citizens of a country. Now, ancient Hindu law recognized 8 forms of marriage, out of which 4 were regular and 4 were irregular. These 8 forms of marriage were different from each other. Different in the aspect that it depicts a different stage of social progress within them. So a stage had been reached when codification of the law of marriage had become virtually indispensable. A uniform and comparative system governing all Hindus and containing a series of propositions carefully considered was a long felt need. It had been generally recognized for a long time that the rules of marriage should be altered and turned into a body of law. So I would like to also take on the historical perspective which led to the codification of the law. Legislation of laws relating to Hindu marriage began from the year 1829 when Sati Pratha was abolished by law and also was declared as an offense. In 1856, Hindu Widows Remarriage Act legalized the marriage of Hindu widows. Then in 1929, Child Marriage Restraint Act was established. Today it is known as Child Marriage Prohibition Act. Now then, as already mentioned by Advocate Jyoti Pawar, Special Marriage Act 1954 was established. It was established for marriage of two persons belonging to different religion or faith so that they can get married under this act. And the obligations, rights, and duties and the status of the parties to the marriage will be governed as per the provisions of the act. Then Hindu Marriage Act 1955 was codified and was enacted and came into force on 18th May 1955. It amends and codified the law relating to the Hindu marriage among the Hindu marriage. A marriage not duly solemnized or performed as per this under the provisions or the customs of this act is no marriage at all. The condition that whether party there was a condition that no party should have a spouse living at the time of marriage is what do you call it, is indispensable, and which is now which is also called monogamy. So that one spouse, only one husband and wife. There should not be multiple spouses. After 18th May 1955, it also contained prohibited degrees of relationship and a ban arising from sapindaship, which cannot be ignored, except that there is a custom which dispenses with the bar. Now, there were notable changes brought about by this act in the law of marriage, which are like monogamy, which I just said, which is enforced by the legislation. Bigamy was made a punishable offense. Provision was made for legitimacy of children born out of void and voidable marriages. Then there was a provision. Then there's a provision of maintenance also. This act, which is a wonderful legislation, has also provided for reliefs which can be obtained. Some of the few reliefs are like if a marriage for a degree of nullity in the marriage being void under section 11 of the act, then again a degree of nullity of marriage being voidable under section 12 of the act, and decree for divorce on grounds specified under section 13 of the act, judicial separation on grounds specified under section 10 of the act, and of course restitution of conjugal rights under section 19 of the act. These are the reliefs which have been provided under this act. Now, the act also provides for grounds for whether marriage can be declared as voidable. Now, there are various grounds, the few of which are like mental incapacity of the respondent at the time of marriage, or consent obtained by force and fraud. These are some of the grounds which a marriage can be declared as voidable also, as being the relief which has been provided under this act. Now, one of the important aspect of this act is section 7, which relates to the ceremonies being performed in a Hindu marriage. Now, one is the most important ceremony is the Saptapadi, where the bride and the bridegroom jointly take 7 steps before the sacred fire. Now, with the completion of the 7th step, the marriage becomes final and binding. The Saptapadi is the most important ceremony in the marriage. Thank you. I would like. No,
Okay. Thank you, Advocate Gupta, for giving your views. And he has basically given the details how the Hindu Marriage Act has come in force and what are the advantages, why it was came into the force and what are the advantages. And he also mentioned about the Sati Pratha Abolition Act, about the Child Marriage Prohibition Act, etc. And he gave, according to him, the Saptapadi, which is in the Hindus' marriage, is very important, and that is the emphasis on this Hindu Marriage Act. Thank you very much, Advocate Sanket Gupta, for giving your views. Now, I would like to invite my next guest, and he's Advocate Palash Banerjee. Advocate Palash Banerjee has done BBA, LLB from Bharati Vidya Peeth New Law College, Pune. Currently, he is practicing advocate in the Lucknow High Court and all other courts such as District Court, Family Court, Commercial Court, Consumer Court, and various tribunals. Welcome, Advocate Palash Banerjee, on our show. Advocate Palash Banerjee, you have already heard what Dr. Rajiv Anand, what Advocate Jyoti Pawar, as well as Advocate Sanket Gupta has mentioned before you. And they all have given their views about the marriage and law. Now, we would like to know from you your views on marriage and law. Advocate Palash Banerjee, please.
Greetings and regards to all senior panelists of the panel. With the diverse experience of the panel, I must say, with the limited amount of experience I have, I will try to show as much as light as I can on the said proposition and topic. We are a diverse country, India, with multiple castes, communities, religions, living under the same name from hundreds of years. And as I may say, that laws are a reflection of a practice in our society. What is prevalent and what has happened in the past is whatever has led to formulation of these laws which we have today. Due to unlimited oppression in yesteryears post-independence era, in the name of patriarchy or other practices prevalent in the society, these laws were formulated to protect and safeguard the interests of women. For that matter, we had Dowry Prohibition Act, we have Domestic Violence Act, we have various safeguards provided under the Hindu Marriage Act. But as I may say, post 1991, the world led and ushered into globalization. The era of globalization opened gates of all countries to welcome all sorts of diverse cultures, thinking and mentalities which have entered our country, and our practices have reached other countries. I have seen that we as a country are not very sure where we stand. At one end, we want to stick to our old values and cultures. On a different footing, we tend and pretend to be absolutely very modern because we are trying to copy the West. The problem here is we don't have a clear stand of what we are and who we are. That paradigm shift has led to all the problems which are arising in our society. If I may raise some data, 1.36 million people in our country are divorced. The highest divorce rate is in not a patriarchal society, it is in a matriarchal society. The state of Mizoram has the highest divorce rate, 4.08%, way more than a patriarchal society. So this entire fight is of not matriarchy or patriarchy. It is a fight that we have refused to make limited amounts of compromises and adjustments. In the past, there were extreme compromises and adjustments, and currently there are no compromises and adjustments. We as a species have failed to strike a balance, which we need to. If I may say so, laws such as dowry, Section 498 IPC, were initially introduced to safeguard the interests of women who were tormented behind the closed doors of her house. Later, those laws were used as an instrument to intimidate the family of the in-laws, the husband. If I may say so, that under an FIR of 498 IPC, even as young as a 2-year-old child has gone behind bars because anyone and everyone named in the FIR will go behind bars. Now, when the practice of rampant misuse became so prevalent, what happened was Supreme Court through various checks and balances discussed and discouraged initial arrest when an FIR is being registered under 498 IPC. Now in matrimonial disputes, what we see is they are so rampant and people want the better of the other party to the extent that they try to create a fake story, a fake narrative. Like if there may be a minor dispute, they have consulted an advocate to make the case stick. A proper FIR will be drafted. As many sections can be attracted to it. there may not be any case of dowry there, but Dowry Prohibition Act will be included. There may not be any domestic violence, but a parallel proceeding of domestic violence will be initiated. In the name of strategy, families are getting destroyed. And if I may tell the viewers, they may also go up to YouTube and search for a documentary by the name of Martyrs of Marriage, in which real stories of the victims of 498 AIPC is there. We can see that. And I may say so that society today has led to the position that we have live-in relationships also, parallel to marriages. There is less amount of acceptance for it. But through various judgments, Supreme Court has even secured live-in relationships in our society. The key issues, if I may say so, which are prevalent, is that government has not provided a robust mechanism for mediation. By the law, when the FIR is filed, the matter is instantly referred to mediation. When the mediation is failed, the trial, pre-trial, another mediation begins. If a divorce by mutual consent case is filed, there is a separate mediation for it. If you are aggrieved by an order of the family court and you move to high court, there is a separate mediation for it. If there are 4 mediations, why there is no resolution? Why there is no compromise? Why are they fighting tooth and nail in court? It's because that I have personally seen that a normal room will have 4 parties. When parties are not in a same state of mind, how can they mediate among themselves? They can never mediate. We have mechanically put provisions to implementation, but there is no resolution there out there. In fact, divorce by mutual consent proceedings, you may see that the mediation in it is a mere formality. The law gives you a chance after filing the petition also to safeguard the marriage. But people have made up their mind, so they proceed otherwise, that living separately is the right decision to make. So they part ways. And most importantly, mediation proceedings should be the proceedings which should be free from family. If I may say so, and I'm sorry to say that parties tend to involve their families in mediation proceedings. And what they do is they try to take the better of each other in all the mediation. The marriage is between a man and a woman. So the mediation also should be between a man and a woman. But no, the in-laws will file tooth and nail. They will make hideous aspersions in an open room where there are 10 parties present, because getting a alimony is more important, getting maintenance is more important, causing disrepute to someone is more important. Nobody has the intention to safeguard a marriage. Because what I may say, that the law is so friendly in order to break a marriage, that saving a marriage is more difficult than breaking it. It's very easy to break a marriage and it's very difficult to save it. So it's human nature. The person goes on to break the marriage. They will never try to make efforts to try to save it. And if we will see our data during COVID, domestic violence cases were prevalent. They were prevalent, they were rampant. And I have myself seen in custodial hearings, we cannot even imagine the extent to which the parents will file tooth and nail in court. The minor children bearing witness to the utter dismay of the condition of their parents, and the parents will not even consider the psyche of the child. The main important aspect of parenthood is not procreation. According to me, it is the responsibility of those parents to give society to smart individuals in the name of children who are not broken, shattered, and have not have had childhood traumas. But by these custodial hearings, the children will never believe in the institution of marriage. I have gone on to see that the parents are more interested in bribing the court staff rather than calming down the children who is crying profusely standing there, unable to comprehend what is going on. Last for the least, I want to say that the government should provide a better infrastructure, a robust infrastructure wherein there is proper competent individuals to conduct hearings of mediation. What is done is that advocates are hired for mediation proceedings with their vested self-interest. Learned, trained family counselors should be hired for this practice. But that is not the case because we have mechanically implemented the laws just for the sake of it. Also, we need gender neutral laws to the extent that the temptation of using the law to end a marriage should be discouraged. It should be discouraged in not a fashion that if a person is subject to malpractice and is a victim of a crime, should definitely use the law. But in normal circumstances, to encourage them to safeguard and protect a marriage, the laws should be a little unfavoring. By making them neutral, you will automatically create a mechanism for them to intentionally think to safeguard and protect the marriage. But if the law will be so straight and so clear that you can straightforward approach the court and end a marriage, they will never be safeguarded. That is all from my side.
Okay, thank you very much, Advocate Palash Banerjee, for giving your views. And Advocate Palash has started with the Dowry Act. He mentioned about the Hindu Marriage Act, and he says the Dowry Act was misused by many by creating, even for the small disputes, they try to put many such type of sections and try to put all the things so that the family of the boy side to be harassed. And he has given example that a child of 2 years was also gone behind the bar because as per the law, whomsoever has been mentioned in the FIR, it was. And now the Supreme Court has changed a few things. They have amended after seeing all those misuse of the laws. And he has also mentioned very clearly that divorce mediation is all, it's just a commercialized, or you can say mechanical, according to him. He says totally they are not having any heart, the way they are doing it and the way the children are suffering, as what our Dr. Rajiv Anand also mentioned in the very beginning. Same thing Advocate Palash Banerjee has mentioned, that nobody is interested for reconciliation. They are only interested how they can try to take the pond's flesh from the pond, this thing, because they are more interested in alimony, they are more interested in the maintenance. Similarly, the boy side wants to put all types of false allegations, which are being, so basically no one is interested for the that the marriage can be again worked out, and so there will be no divorce proceedings. But according to him, lots of changes are required, and we should try to get the experts, proper experts, the psychiatrist or those counselors who can give the proper counseling, not the advocates, counselors who have their own vested interest. So this was the views of Advocate Palash Banerjee. Thank you very much, Advocate Palash Banerjee, for giving your views. Now my question goes to Dr. Rajiv Anand. Dr. Rajiv Anand, as per our Divorce Act, 1 year separation is required. Once a girl or file a case for the divorce, you require that at least 1 year they have to live separately, and then afterwards the 6 months dates will be given. So almost 1.5 years. Now, you being a psychiatrist, you can very well understand the condition of a girl for 1.5 years, the trauma which she has to undergo when the proceedings will take place, although the court is giving for the time of mediation. But as Advocate Palash has mentioned, that meditation is also nothing but a character assassination of the girl side. That is one side. The second side is that in many places, I'm telling with full authority, many places, both the families decide to show in the court that the marriage took place earlier than the actual date. So 2 years or 3 years back, or 1 year, more than 1 year back, they filed the case, and within 6 months, the divorce taking place. Now, when this is the situation, why not the government change this 1 year separation thing? They will say, okay, go for the 6 months or 3 months. Because if they have to join again, 1 month is also sufficient time. If they have not to join, even 6 months, if the government will give 6 years, they will not join. What you say about this, Dr. Rajiv Anand? Being a marriage counselor as well as a psychiatrist, you know far better than the legal fraternity or a layperson like me.
Yeah, Mr. Lal, first let me say that when we had conceived of today's topic, we had no idea that so much substance would come out. And I'm really very, very highly appreciative, as well as taking note of it, that Jyoti Pawar's, what she said, Palash, what he said, Sanket, what he said. So much of information, so much of enlightenment is happening to each one of us. And when I say to me also, I can vouch that thousands of you also would agree with me. What Palash has said in the last comment, I'm first taking that up before I come to you, Mr. Lal, for what you asked me for. That as if the institution of marriage is crumbling apart and nobody is interested in cementing it back, not even the law. There is an assembly line. Moment you decide that you want divorce, everything is ready for you to join the bandwagon and then come out after so much time out of the marriage. And this is as if it's very easy. There are experts, lawyer who would help you out with the divorce. As Palash said, it's easier to break the marriage than to make the marriage work. I'm really astonished about Palash's observation at his age that more parents on either both side or single side, they are the biggest enemy of their ward's marriage, their children's marriage. Because marriage, which, Mr. Lal, even though I'm apparently deviating from the question you've asked me, permit me for a minute more. The marriage was essentially between two hearts. Only two hearts. There was no business of the mind. So as question asked by Mr. Lal, the whole legal system, law ministry, judiciary need to review this. Where is the need for many minds? Many minds of the relatives of both sides, lawyers of both sides. Why can't, when we ask them mandatory 1 year or 6 months, why can't we stipulate that they have to meet once in a month? They have to review. They have to think again. They have to look into what led them to that decision. If their heart is not yet dead, if they have children, they would possibly reconcile. If they are allowed or if they're asked to meet every month over the next 1 year. If they're allowed to remain separate, then they would continue being guided or misguided by the other minds, and they would continue being harsh, and they would take the decision which would be very injurious, very harmful for their long-term interests. Over to you, Mr. Lal.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Anand. Now, my question goes to Advocate Jyoti Pawar. Advocate Jyoti Pawar, why not common or uniform civil code? In India, this uniform civil code is applicable only in Goa. Why not entire country? Recently, our Chief Justice of India has said that nation should learn from Goa its common civil code. When we all, one side we say no caste, creed, no difference between caste, creed, religion, and language, then why not we have a uniform civil code so that there should be no difference of the Marriages Act, different Marriages Act, or whatnot? What you say about this, Advocate Pawar?
That will be the best thing which will happen to India if this common civil code is brought into existence. But today we have different cultures, different religions in the society, as far as the Indian society is concerned. And some of the religious heads are objecting for such uniform civil code. And therefore, this cannot be brought into existence, since there are a lot of objections which have been raised by certain religions, which I do not want to name on this platform. But we are fighting day in and out to bring this uniform civil code, as you have stated rightly, that Goa is being the first state which is following the uniform civil code. We in India, if we bring about the uniform civil code, definitely all the laws, marriage laws, as well as the Divorce Act, they will be governed by this uniform civil code, and that will be one of the biggest milestones in the law field that will happen if such a thing happens. We are for it, sir.
Dr. Anand, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Why I mentioned about the Goa advocate Jyoti Pawar, because we all know that the Goa people enjoys, even the local people enjoy, and they are all caste and creeds and religious people are staying, and they are enjoying. They are. I don't think that people have any such type of problems in Goa, and they have a very happy life there. It means the uniform civil code is successful in one state, which is from the very beginning. This is required.
That's very true.
Okay, thank you very much, Advocate Jyoti Pawar. Now my question goes to Advocate Sanket Gupta. Advocate Sanket Gupta, are you there?
Yes,
Please,
sir.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
This Special Marriage Act was enacted in 1954, and it applies to all the citizens of India.
Yes, sir.
Then what was the need to bring Hindu Marriage Act in 1955?
Hindu Marriage Act, sir, was the ceremonies, especially the Saptapadi, the codification of the law was required. Special Marriage Act can be, and Hindu Marriage Act applies only to Hindus. Special Marriage Act applies to Hindu as well as a non-Hindu, any two citizens, any two people. So Hindu Marriage Act is governing the what you call the rights and obligations of the parties, the legitimacy of the children, whether void marriage, voidable marriage, or marriage, the obligations between husband and wife as a couple.
But my question is, when Special Marriage Act covers everyone, why don't you think this is against the Constitution? As per Article 21, it is very clear that no distinction between caste, creed, religion, and culture. This is that you are specifically only for Hindus. When you already have a marriage act of which covers everyone, why this need of Saptapadi can also be covered in under a Special Marriage Act? You should have added in that. Please unmute yourself. Please unmute. Yeah, go ahead, Advocate Sanket Gupta. See, my question is, when a Special Marriage Act is there, it covers all the citizens, whether Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jain, Sikh, everyone. Then why we require a special Hindu Marriage Act, only Hindu Marriage Act, not special, in 1955? It is against the Article 21 of the Constitution. Because it very clearly says no distinction between caste, creed, religion, and everything. And here you are saying enacting a law only for Hindus. Why?
The Hindu marriage, it's basically codifying the personal laws. The Hindu Marriage Act codifies the laws between the marriage laws between two Hindus. Only two Hindus can get marriage registered under Hindu Marriage Act, can perform a marriage under Hindu Marriage Act. Special law is for those people who do inter-caste marriages, interfaith marriages, because Hindu law does not permit marriage between a Hindu and a non-Hindu. So that's why it's not violative of Article 21 of the Constitution. Because we have other special laws of other religions also. They are also not violative of Article 21 because of Special Marriage Act is there.
Okay, thank you, Advocate Gupta. Advocate Jyoti Pawar, I am coming back to you for a clarification. If a Christian or a Muslim or any other non-Hindu married to a Hindu and with the Hindu Customs Act, religious customary ceremony with all this Saptapadi everything, then also it will not come under the Hindu Marriage Act?
No, sir. Then also it will not come under Hindu Marriage Act.
Okay.
So it will be governed by Special Marriage Act.
Special Marriage Act. Okay, thank you very much. Now my question goes to Mr. Advocate Palash Banerjee. Advocate Palash Banerjee, why there is no Muslim Marriage Act? when you have acts for Hindus separately, and as Advocate Pawar mentioned, there was an act for Parsis, then there is a new act for the Anand Act for the Sikhs. Why there is no marriage, Muslim Marriage Act till now in India?
Sir, actually the thing is that their personal law is governed from Shariat. Quran and Hadith. Shariat is their personal law. Their marriage procedure and the entire procedure of marriage up till divorce is governed from the Shariat law. Because if we may see that in Allah was a human being for that matter. Jesus was the Son of God. In our case, we see God differently. In our case, we are from Hindus are Sanatan.
Sorry, in our case means?
In case of Hindus, it is Sanatan Dharma.
I have to clarify because I
Agreed,
can't say.
agreed.
Yeah,
In case of Hindus, it is Sanatan Dharma. It's a practice. It's a way of life. In Shariat, their book is already codified. It covers the practices and how they are supposed to get married, how the amount of meher will be decided prior to marriage, how will it be paid. In their case, marriage is a social contract. In our case, it's a sacrosanctment. There are very much ideological differences. And I laud our country to respect the boundaries of each religion and provide them with their personal laws so that they have equal right to life and personal liberty under this country to profess and practice their religion freely. That's why I feel that it will be very difficult to implement uniform civil code in a country like India. It will be a complete overhaul, and I don't see feasibly getting it implemented. Theoretically, it may be, but practically, it is far-fetched.
Okay. Thank you very much, Advocate Palash Banerjee, for giving your views. Now, my last round, 30 seconds only. Dr. Rajiv Anand, any suggestion to the government and advice to public? 30 seconds, please.
My suggestion is more than the government and to the public, to the individual, that if you are married to someone, please have respect for the God, respect for the fire witnessing whom you took the vow, respect for your parents, respect for the ladies, respect for the wife, respect for the girl who decided to be your life partner. If you grow more on respect, nothing would happen legally, nothing would be required to knock at the door of the court. Please grow more on respect, like you develop gardening, like Mr. Lal has a beautiful garden all around him. Let there be a garden of respect for each other, and you would be happy forever.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anand. Advocate Jyoti Pawar, your suggestion to government and advice to public, 30 seconds, please. Please unmute.
My advice to the government would be this, that the uniform civil code should be brought in. As Mr. Palash, Advocate Palash said, that it will not be implemented. Yes, it will take its own time, but it shall be implemented. So therefore, they should go in for it. And the courts today have to keep in pace with the changing situations. And as Dr. Anand has said, that better counselors should be brought in the family courts.
Okay.
And the emotional issue should be, it should be seen as an emotional situation.
Okay.
Not as a commercial.
Thank you very much, Advocate Jyoti Pawar. Now, Advocate Sanket Gupta, your suggestion to the government and advice to public, 30 seconds, please.
My suggestion or advice will be that marriage is a sacred institution. It needs to be protected. It needs to be regulated also. So whatever laws, whether Uniform Civil Code or any other law which is being enforced or brought into place, should balance the rights of all the parties. And marriage is very much like it's a foundation of a happy home, or healthy home, and that's the basic foundation of our society as well as for the country.
Okay, thank you very much, Advocate Sanket Gupta. Now, Advocate Palash Banerjee, your suggestion and advice, 30
so
seconds.
My suggestion would be that, one, there are still people who don't compulsorily register their marriage. We should make marriage registration compulsory to the point that failure to registration will lead to any kind of penalty. And we should add one aspect to it, that at the time of registration, there will be a session for counseling before you starting your marital life. Just the way we were kids back day in school, we were taught before going to school, we were taught before going to college. We are never taught before entering marriage life.
Okay.
We
Okay.
should be taught.
Okay.
And for individuals, if I may say, they should refrain from interference from family. And most importantly, if the marriage is a complete failure, don't contest it in court. Simply go for a divorce by mutual consent.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Advocate Palash Banerjee. So today you have seen that aspect of marriage as well as law, and that conditions in India. Our one panelist says that initially there was no such type of divorces, no domestic violence, and people were living very happily. But one of the panelists mentioned that earlier there used to be 3 or 4 or 5 wives of a person. That's why these laws have been bought. So the advantages of the laws were there, disadvantages of laws are there, or you can say the misuse of the law. After all, the government or the courts are trying to implement the law in spirit, but the problem is it has been misused by both the sides. We cannot blame only the boy side or the girl side. Both sides are misusing it. So it is the responsibility of the civil society, not the government. If we are not aware that why, and if we have a malified intention, definitely the marriage will not work. As Dr. Rajiv Anand says, please respect the marriage. If you have no respect for your own marriage, then how you expect that the government or the courts or the lawyers can respect your marriage if you are not interested in your marriage or your family members are not interested? So it is a wake-up call for all the civil society, all the parents, all the in-laws, all the boys and the girls. Please respect the marriage, because this is such a thing. If you are not interested, no problem. But what is going to happen to the children? You are not bothered for them. This is very bad, and that is why this program is that we just try to create awareness. Rest the viewers have to decide. Thank you very much. And today's program, which has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Sarokar News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor is to bring to you every day a new topic. And tomorrow, our topic is my role model. And in this topic, the condition is no political living personality will be your my role model. Otherwise, it will become a political akhada. And our chief guest tomorrow is Dr. Anita Singh. She's the director, Saraswati College of Professional Studies, Ghaziabad, along with 7 young youth who will be interacting and seeing who can be your real my role model. Thank you very much, Dr. Rajiv Anand. Thank you very much, Advocate Jyoti Pawar. Thank you very much, Advocate Sanket Gupta. And thank you very much, Advocate Palash Banerjee. And thank you all the viewers. I'm sure today's program is enlightened someone. And if we will be able to save even one marriage, I think the program has served the purpose. Thank you all. Thank you very much.